Together, we can continue to make a difference in this costly crime. And now, HEAT and the ATPA are proud to present the Law Enforcement Television Network Spotlight, Identifying the Stolen Motor Vehicle.
.42, I have a traffic stop.
1142, go ahead.
The guy working the street,
Bellwood,
the most
9
important
Charles
individual in the
John
police
75.
department, the guy working the street, can get himself right at the foundation of a major case, major criminal investigation. Bad guys drive stolen cars. Bad guys that drive stolen cars can be narcotics dealers, narcotics traffickers, smugglers, serial killers. All those kinds of things can come from that. And if they take that time and they get themselves involved and get them excited about doing that kind of stuff, they're going to observe so much more. They're going to be involved in they will get themselves involved in so much more things that they got into police work and to law enforcement in the first place over. They can go out and make good arrests and make good cases and be good police officers. If they just take that little step, go just that little farther, start with vehicle theft, they'll be great.
Hello, I'm Bill Quiet. Welcome to part 2 of our series on motor vehicle theft. On our last program, we looked at detecting the stolen motor vehicle. Ken Tassi told us then about the importance of being aware of the things you see every day. Things like the car at night without its headlights on, or the driver who doesn't dim his brights when you approach. Could it be they can't turn the lights on or dim their brights because they damaged the switches when they broke open the steering column? You won't know unless you stop them and take a look. What about that car parked in an out-of-the-way place? Is it stolen? And that wrecker operator, is that a legitimate tow, or is he stealing that car? Why not stop and ask? What about that temporary paper tag you see in the smoked back window of a $40,000 SUV? Is it real or a phony drawn with a felt tip pen?
My car was stolen. I was shopping.
Is the person making a stolen vehicle report a victim or someone taking the first step toward committing insurance fraud? And when you make a traffic stop or any time you come in contact with a member of the public, are you aware of the tools of the auto theft trade? What it all boils down to is doing the job you got into law enforcement to do, taking the bad guy off the street. And you can never assume that the last officer the person came into contact with did his job.
One of the other auto theft teams is currently working an investigation, which is an interstate case. They have talked to the main suspect and they have arrested him on a number of counts, and at the time of the arrest, they took from him his personal vehicle. And he had a small car dealership, and it had a dealer plate on it. And I use that as an example because in our state, when we stop that car, they may not have paperwork on the car because it's a dealer plate. I'm taking it out for a test drive. And the police officer that stops him says, okay, I understand that, but you're still 10 miles over the speed limit, you need to slow down a little bit. But they don't go any farther. And in this case, this individual that is a suspect in a major interstate theft case says to the police officers in the interview that he's been stopped on several occasions by law enforcement at the state, the county, and the local level over the 3-year period that he's owned this vehicle. And he's actually gotten a couple tickets. And in not one case did anybody look at the VIN plate and write the VIN number down and run that VIN number to see if the vehicle was stolen. And had they done that, they'd have found that that vehicle was stolen, straight up. He was so busy retagging all the other cars he was stealing, he didn't bother to retag the one he's driving. And nobody looked. Now just think, now if you got that guy on one car, and if you stopped him on the street and found out that that was stolen, now I've got a car, I've got a suspect, and now I've got leverage. And now we're going to sit down and we're going to interview him. And now I'm going to use my interview techniques to see why he has this car.
As in the case Ken Tassi just mentioned, the first tool in your kit for identifying the stolen motor vehicle is the VIN, the Vehicle Identification Number.
And kind of historically, it goes back to 1954, and since 1954, vehicles have had some kind of an identification number. That travels through history to where we come to 1981, where a standard was created, a federal standard that says if you're going to build and sell vehicles in the United States, and these vehicles are going to be on United States roads, then they are going to have a 17-character number that all manufacturers are going to emulate. Everybody's going to have a 17-character number. It's all going to have specific parts that mean specific things. And what that does for the police officer, if he understands that, and he understands the basic parts, he doesn't have to understand that every single character in that VIN number has information available based on that character. He knows that. But for his purposes on the street, if he can break that number down to the basic parts, then it gives him a good foundation to begin to start to determine if the vehicle in front of him is legitimate or not.
The 17-character VIN is required on all vehicles manufactured or sold in the United States. And the standard rule is the VIN plate must be attached to the left side of the dashboard in an area which can be seen through the windshield. An exception to this requirement was Chevrolet Corvettes manufactured prior to 1984. The Corvette and several foreign manufacturers had their VIN plates attached to the left side windshield post. In spite of the difference, the VIN could still be read through the windshield. To determine if a vehicle you are looking at is in fact stolen, it is important that you understand the various components that make up the current VIN format.
Let's take a look at this example of a good VIN number and break it down so you can see how each section relates and what each part means in the construction of a good VIN number. If we look at the first three characters in this example, the 2C3, that section is the World Manufacturer Identification section. Basically, it's telling you who built the vehicle. In this particular example, the 2 indicates that the vehicle is Canadian built. The C indicates that it's a Chrysler product, and the 3 indicates that it's a passenger car. That's all that's going on in this section. It's just telling you who built the vehicle. The next 5 characters are the vehicle description section. This is a section that tells you what stuff went into and on the car, such as the gross vehicle weight, the braking system, the restraint system, whether it's a hardtop or a convertible, those kinds of things. But for the street officer on the street, what's more important is what comes right after that, and that's the 9th character position. And if we look at our example, we're looking at the character 1. This is the check digit position, the 9th character. Understand that the only characters that can go in this position are the numbers 0 through 9 or the letter X. Those are the only characters that are available to go in this position. How, or rather, what character is placed in this position is derived from solving a mathematical formula. You don't need to know the formula or how to solve it. Just understand that this was based on a mathematical formula, and what this position does is it verifies the entire VIN to tell you whether the VIN number itself is valid or not. The next character in line, the T, which is the 10th character position, what this is this is telling you what model year the vehicle is. And in our example, we're looking at a 1996. The 11th character, the H, all that's telling you is where this vehicle was built. In our example, that's Bramley, Ontario, Canada. The last 6 characters, the 229734, this is a sequential production number. This is just what number car this is rolling off the assembly line. These last characters, from the 10th character to the end, the TH229734, this is the vehicle identification section, and it is this section that is unique to this particular vehicle and any vehicle that's being manufactured. This just tells you that this particular unit was the 229,734th vehicle coming off the line.
The VIN plate on a car is your starting point for identifying the stolen motor vehicle. But it is only that, a starting point. There are other identifiers on a vehicle that are readily accessible to you.
What I want to do over the next couple minutes is I want to use this GMC Yukon as an example of how you can go through on either a traffic stop or a vehicle that you come in contact with for any reason and go through that vehicle to determine its legitimacy and in fact maybe recover a stolen vehicle. How that is going to start is by looking at the VIN plate, the public VIN number. Now that can happen as a result of a traffic stop, or it can happen as in this example, a vehicle is parked. If it was a traffic stop, you would have made contact with the driver, you would have obtained their driver's license, the registration for the vehicle, proof of insurance, any other documentation that they give you, because you want to take all the documentation that they give you. Once you have that, then you're going to take the registration and you're going to look at the number, you're going to compare that to the public VIN number that's on the plate. In this example, this vehicle's parked, so you're not going to have that information available, but you're still going to be able to walk up and look at the VIN plate, the VIN number, and take a look and see how it's configured. You want to look at all the numbers and characters in the number to determine if they appear legitimate or not, or whether they've been tampered with or altered, or are in the fashion that the manufacturer commonly uses in their VIN plates. You want to look at the plate itself. You want to, if it has a barcode, as this example does, you want to look at the bars. Are they crisp, are they clear, or are they faded and wobbly, which would indicate that there's some kind of tampering going on. Maybe they've silk screened a regular piece of metal to make it appear like a public VIN plate. You want to look at the rosette rivets. You want to see if they're attached as the manufacturer attaches them, that there are no spin marks, any other kind of gouges, bends, tears, anything like that that looks unusual about the plate. Which brings up a point. If I want to do this kind of stuff, I want to get involved, I want to take that little step and I want to move here and I want to get more involved in attempting to locate and recover stolen vehicles, that means that you're going to have to spend a little bit of time and go out to a new car dealership and look at VIN plates that you know are good, that are on new cars sitting in a new car lot. And that doesn't take a lot of time. For most of us, when we were out on the road or we're working, you have to do property inspections. And what better way? Go to a car dealership, do a property inspection, check to see if the vehicles are locked or unlocked, and take a look at how the manufacturers attaching their VIN plates to their vehicles. You also, in this case, you want to look around the plate. You want to see if there's any indication that the windshield has been removed, which might mean that they've taken the windshield out to attack the VIN plate and either remove it and put in a new one or alter it. You've done all these things, and for this example, let's say that there's a problem, that you don't like what you see with the VIN plate. The next area you can go to right away is you can come over here to the driver's side door, and you can go and you can look at the federal certification label. In this particular example, if I open the car door, or the Yukon's door, you're going to see that the federal certification label is on the driver's side door. An alternate location, depending on the manufacturer, would be over on the pillar post right down here along the driver's side seat, just as an alternative, because different manufacturers will put these federal certification labels in either location. In any event, once I find where this location is, I have the full VIN number, in this case right here, that's telling me what the number is on the federal certification label. I also have the month and year of manufacture. So now I have two more pieces of information I have available to start building to determine if this is a legitimate vehicle or not. I can compare the VIN number that's on my federal certification label with the number that's on the public VIN plate. Again, we're using this vehicle as an example. So let's say I've looked at my VIN plate and I've looked at the number on the plate and it doesn't look right to me for whatever reason. So I've gone to the federal certification label. I've looked at that. I've determined that it doesn't look right. It doesn't appear to be attached right. It may be missing, or it may be gouged, or there's just something not right. And so what I want to do is I want to take another step. I want to go to one of those other tools in my toolbox to see if I can put more information together that's going to help me identify this vehicle. So in this particular case, being that it's a GM, I know that there is a service parts label on these vehicles. And that I know in a general sense, you're going to find them in the glove box or the center console. So in this case, we're going to go over on the other side of the vehicle. Typically on GM vehicles such as this, you're going to find the service parts label either in the glove box or in the center console. Which brings up a point that I need to address. In Michigan, there is no expectation of privacy in a VIN. What that means to me is that if I make a traffic stop or I come in contact with a vehicle, I have the ability to open the door to look at the federal certification label for the VIN number. I have the ability and the legal right to open the door and open the glove box to look for the VIN number on the service parts label for GM vehicles, or for any other kind of VIN number or number that's going to help me identify this vehicle, or the center console. if this was a passenger car as opposed to a sport utility vehicle, the service parts label in this case may not be in the glove box or in the center console. It may be in the trunk, under the deck lid, or on the spare tire cover. I also have a right to go there and open the trunk to find that number, to compare it to my other numbers, to verify that this vehicle is legitimate or illegitimate. My suggestion is because of where you may be, you may need to contact your prosecutor to determine if you have those same kind of legal rights as we do here in Michigan. In this particular case, the service parts label is located in the glove box. And in trying to find that number, you may have to move articles that are in the glove box to find it. But once there, you can see that it's stuck here, and all these different codes are just telling you what stuff has been attached to this vehicle, put on the vehicle. But in the upper corner is the full VIN number. And once I find that, I have the ability then to compare this number to what I saw on the federal certification label and also what I saw on the public VIN plate. We've looked at these numbers and determined that they're all legitimate, and they should be. This vehicle is legitimate. But what if it wasn't? What if we take and we're going to pretend for a minute that this vehicle isn't legitimate, that we still have a problem with this vehicle? Instead of when we look at the numbers and we find out, yeah, they all match up, we're going to say, just for educational purposes, just as an example, that we look at the VIN number and the model year is saying that it's a 1995. But when we step back and look at the sheet metal, we're saying this looks like a 98. It doesn't look right. The body doesn't seem to match up with the year. So how can we continue on and try to help us verify the legitimacy of this vehicle? One of the first things and the easiest things that we can do is we can look at the seatbelt code. And so what we do is we pull up the seatbelt, pull the seatbelt out to its full length, and we look for where the label is. And in this particular example, the label is worn off. This is a silk screen type of a label here. Well, what does that mean? The real world is the fact that these things can be worn down. But in any event, we know that not only should it be on this seatbelt, but it should be on every seatbelt in the vehicle. So if I find that my first one looks like this, and it could be legitimate, or somebody could have attempted to take it off, all I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to another seatbelt in the vehicle. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to pull this seatbelt out to its full extension, and when I pull this one out, I find that there's a label there. Now, because this is a legitimate vehicle, when I look at this label, down in the bottom I see the number 89495. Those last two numbers, 95, indicate that this is a 95 seatbelt, which matched up to our VIN numbers. But in our example, we're saying that that wasn't right, that we thought that the body style for this was a 98. And what if I'd have pulled this seatbelt out and the seatbelt said 98, or it said 97? Now I've got a potential problem, or there's something wrong here, or at least it begs the question, why is this like this? So if I get to this point and I find a seatbelt code that doesn't match up to the vehicle as it should, where can I go? I can go to the EPA label and I can check that for the model year and attempt to verify that year against my vehicle. Typically, the EPA label is going to be found on top of the radiator support, as it is in this case. And if we read, we see that it says that this vehicle conforms to US EPA regulations applicable to 1995 model year new light-duty trucks, as it should. This is a legitimate vehicle. And therefore, we've just confirmed that the model year indicated on the EPA label matches up what we saw on our VIN numbers. And that's as it should be. We've just looked at all the possible identifiers, all the information that's available to you on the street to help you determine whether a vehicle is legitimate or there's a potential for it to be stolen. Certainly, out on the street, you're not going to take one piece of this information to base your decision on. I'm going to take each piece, I'm going to put it together. Once I have all that information together, then I'm going to make a determination as to what the status of this vehicle is. If it's legitimate, and in the real world, yes, it can be, then it's fine. I'm going to let it go down the road. But if it's not, or there's a further question, at that point, I'm going to make the decision to impound this vehicle and hold it until I can do a thorough exam on it to determine its positive identity.
As Ken Tassi said, all of these numbers are like tools in the toolbox of the patrol officer trying to identify a stolen motor vehicle. Let's say you have a vehicle you're suspicious of. You've looked at the VIN plate and compared it to the federal certification label. You've examined the service parts label, the seatbelt codes, and the EPA sticker, and still something's not right. There are other numbers on the vehicle to assist you. every vehicle has hidden confidential numbers, and depending on the make and model of the vehicle, it may have high theft labels.
Manufacturers every year determine what they consider to be their high theft car lines, basically which of their models are being stolen the most. And they come out and say, we're designating that these are our high theft car lines. When that occurs, then they are required to put on a high theft label. And what that is that this is a tamper resistant label that goes on all the major component parts of the vehicle and includes the full 17 character VIN. Not a derivative or not a cross-referenceable number. It has the full 17 character VIN on that label. And again, that goes on all the major component parts. So in other words, it goes on the left and right fenders. It goes on the hoods. It goes on all the doors, whether it's a 2-door or 4-door. It goes on the rear quarter panels. It goes on the rear deck lid. It goes on the front and rear bumpers. It goes on the engine and transmission. If it's a car line, it can have a high theft label on a cargo box or a pickup truck box, pickup bed, depending again on the vehicle itself, and if it's determined to be a high theft label or a high theft car line. And again, it gives you the opportunity to go, and if I recognize this as a high theft car line and these other things aren't adding up, I can open a door and look for the high theft label. I can look for it on a fender. I can look for it on a hood. Now, if I'm looking for these high theft labels and they're all gone, then again, you're back to that same question as you were in the beginning. Why is that? What legitimate reason can there be for taking all the high theft labels off the car? There's no reason for it. They're designed to self-destruct. They're supposed to stay there. They're not designed to be removed. And again, even if I have accident damage and I have to say replace my left front fender, and I go to a salvage yard to purchase it because I'm going to do it myself, I can do it. And it has a high theft label on it from a different vehicle, I don't take that label off because I want to be able, if somebody looks at my car down the road, they can say, oh, the fender has been replaced and that's the vehicle it came off of. Or I can determine that all this car is right, except this left front fender has a high theft label, and when I run that VIN number, which is different, it comes back to a stolen car. So I've recovered a stolen part. The idea is not to take those labels off. And so for the guy that's out working the street, when he comes in contact with a vehicle, it gives him one other source to go and attempt to verify what he's looking at as far as a VIN number. Confidential numbers, they are on vehicles. The manufacturer puts confidential numbers hidden in the vehicles. For the guy on the street, the guy that's out working midnights at 3 o'clock in the morning, he needs to know those are available, and he needs to understand that they can be found. But that's not something that he's necessarily going to go after and try to find that number while he's on a traffic stop, for example, at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we tell our people that we come in contact with, if you're to the point where you're looking for a confidential number to help determine the positive identification, then you should have already seized this vehicle. It should be in your possession, because I want to look at this car at my leisure now. I want to make sure it's inside in a garage someplace where if it rains it doesn't matter. I'm not out in the snow. I'm not out in the heat. I can do it at my leisure. But again, if you've come to that point and you're looking for a confidential number, know that they're there, but that at that point, the car, you should be seizing that car. It should be yours until you can positively identify it. And at that point, you may actually call in your local auto theft team or whoever services you as far as vehicle theft, because a lot of departments have identification specialists, people who are trained to come out and find those numbers. They know where they're at, and they can assist the street guy in making a positive identification on the vehicle. If I'm a street officer, if I'm a patrol officer, I want to know that there are all these different sources of information that I can bring together, and once I've looked at a vehicle and I have all this information, I can make a determination as to whether this is a legitimate vehicle or there's something wrong with the vehicle. It's like being a master mechanic. I have all these tools available to me. One wrench doesn't necessarily mean I can fix this car. But if I take this wrench, and I take that wrench, and I take a screwdriver, and I put those tools together, I can fix an engine problem. I know I have the public VIN plate with the VIN number on it. I know that there's a federal certification label that's available to me that will give me information. I know that there's an emissions label, an EPA sticker that's available to me. I know that there's, in GM vehicles, there's service parts labels. I know that there's confidential numbers. I know there's high theft labels. I know there's seatbelt codes. I know that there is this information that I can go to look at. And I can put all this information together, and it will help me make an informed decision as to what the status is of the particular vehicle is in front of me. Not necessarily is each one of those things by itself mean that there's something wrong with the vehicle. It's when you put this all together, when you put all the information you have ahead that you've developed in front of you, you can make a decision as to what this vehicle is. And even if all that information is missing, your EPA label, somebody has cut the labels off of all the seat belts. That doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make legitimate sense. Now, if it's all missing, then there must be something wrong. And so then I can take that vehicle, I have the ability to seize it and hold it until I can get a positive identification. I can go after the confidential numbers. And even if those confidential numbers have been removed, because there are thieves out there that are sophisticated enough that they know as much about the vehicles and the identifiers as you do, and they will remove those too. But you can still make that car, because I've gone and I've examined it now. I've looked at it at my pace, and I'm writing down all the unique stuff. Well, it had a dent in the left front fender. It had a blue door on a red body because it was replaced. You know, there was a stain in the rear seat. Somebody tipped a Coke over and it made a stain. If I have an ability to look at all those things, and I'll have an idea of what that car might be, I can go back to my investigative report, and sure enough, all the identifiers are removed, which is suspicious, but the personal things, the little scratch, all this stuff was also logged over here on my investigative report, and now I put all that information together, and I've just recovered a car, and I have a potential suspect. And now I have a vehicle theft investigation. Now I've taken that extra step. And who knows where it's going to lead? It could be something really big, interstate, inter-country, because the cars go everywhere once they're stolen.
I'm at the corner of Dunkel and Legacy. I'm going to be checking out a tow truck here that's towing a vehicle with the tires locked on it.
Therefore, if you're clear, I'll start on your security.
How you doing, State Police?